So The Gate was, despite being the first track on the album, it was actually written last. I wrote and recorded that whole song in like 5 minutes in my apartment in New York last year at about 4 a.m, thinking that it was just kind of a demo for a larger thing, and then kind of just fell in love with the way it sounded.
Yeah, and now there's a lot of gates going on in the whole campaign. Yeah. I see a lot of gates. What is that? What are those gates about?
Well, I guess the gate is like a boundary. It's like this. It's something that like separates you and the green grass on the other side. Separates you and the utopia beyond. You can see through it. You can pass notes through it. You can be stuck at it, and you can open it. So it was a kind of like visual metaphor. Also, just gates look amazing, and they kind of look the way I wanted a lot of this music to sound. Yeah. No, I know what you mean, and also it's obviously like a portal, isn't it? And I think like I remember we were discussing like what kind of reverb to use on one of the tracks, and you particularly liked the idea when I said that we should use a reverb that sounds like there are no walls, because there are no walls in the Mind Palace, my lord. And basically that it's kind of like there's some kind of internal mental dialogue going on. Exactly. It's all very psychological.
Yeah, that the sort of physical space of the album takes
but
place inside the mind.
The ending lyric of the gate, is kind of in some ways like a mission statement for the album. It's finally there's a way to be both free and safe. This is track number 2 on the album, called Pang. That's the title track of Pang, on Pang, called Pang, also about panging.
What is panging?
Panging is essentially every form of like private like need, desire, internal wanting. Pang is an Old English word, which is very you, Dan. It's like a modification of the word prong, which is like, something sharp that you get poked with. But it's used to describe like hunger, desire, envy, and nostalgia. Essentially, all these moments that you're kind of secretly overcome by some kind of desire, and that's what Pang is about as well. This song.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been saying online that they're really empathizing with this idea. I think it's quite a sort of resonant concept.
Resonant like the synths, etc.
My lord.
The next song is called New Normal, and this song is maybe one of the most structurally wild songs on the album. It's 7 verses, no chorus, and it's the same melody every time, but it just modulates each time. So it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube.
That classic structure.
Yeah, like a 7-sided Rubik's Cube. Here we go. This is New Normal. It's no big deal, this new kind of normal.
Shout out to Bobcat, which is the name of the orange cat that's referred to in that song.
I think in verse 6 or 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that.
Fun fact, very few people know that every verse in that song was actually written about different scenes that took place over the course of Dan and I working on this record. And the second to last one was we were walking back to the studio in Eagle Rock in LA, and we almost got hit by an SUV that careened off the road into a pole in front of us.
That was bonkers.
Yeah. So that's detailed in that song. But yeah, New Normal is a wild track. That song was just written over a bass loop that you made, right, Dan? Yeah,
I was just practicing with different, quite sort of odd modulations and playing with structure, really, as a sense of that. And then we used that harmonic idea to sort of play around with the idea of like different stories, the way like you jump between stories in a dream or something like that. And the sort of connective factor is that it's all stuff that happened to me and you.
Yeah.
So it's...
And that was something I actually surprised you with. I didn't want you to know what the idea for the lyrics was, and then I just presented it to you.
Yeah, it's one of the
probably
few
made
songs.
you very uncomfortable.
No, I feel uncomfortable all the time anyway. It's fine, but it's one of the few songs where I actually know what it's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's New Normal, track 3 off Pang. The next one we've got is very different than the rest of the record. It's called Hit Me Where It Hurts. Let's give it a listen. This whole section is heavily inspired by the Deftones, which I was obsessed with Deftones as a teenager, and it all comes back.
So, feeling like a butterfly inside a plane. What does that mean?
It means that as far as appearances go, nothing is abnormal, but you can feel that something's changing or something's off. You're being moved and not in a way that you are deciding to be moved. Something very large outside your control is happening to you, and you can't wrap your head around it. It's about that feeling.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to that in 2019.
Yeah, defo.
That was written with Andrew Wyatt. Shout out Andrew Wyatt in New York, late 2017. His husky dog was in the studio the whole time with us and slept through some very loud volumes. This next song is track 5 on Pang. It's called I Give Up. Here we go. Shout out Jimmy Stack for this amazing broken drum beat that I fell in love with upon first hearing.
Didn't used to feel this good.
My favorite synth performance coming right up.
These days it's every night, babe.
There's like 8 tracks of me humming stacked up right here. That song is called I Give Up, track 5 off Pang. And that one was written and produced with Dan Nigro, who collaborated with me across a bunch of songs on the record, including Door and So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings. This song kind of represents like the point at which we've kind of descended narratively into different kinds of like apathy and fear and kind of lostness narratively in the album, which kind of crystallizes more in this next track. Dan, we worked on this one together. Actually, both Dans. Dan Nigro, shout out Dan Nigro.
Yeah, no, I can remember you sang it to me just a cappella originally, and I just immediately said that has to be on the album. It's so unique and also just sounds like nothing else that I've heard in this modern age. It's an extraordinary song. It's one of my favorites on the album.
Thanks, Dan. This song is called Look at Me Now. This song is in 7 for all the heads out there. Look at Me Now, acoustic guitar ballad in the time signature 7/4.
Although you wouldn't necessarily know it, like the tune is such a strong melody. Like the best songs in strange time signatures don't make you actually that aware of it because the melody kind of floats over it so easily.
To be honest, it wasn't even done on purpose. When Dan and I wrote it, it felt really good, and then we realized, wait a minute, this isn't a really nuts time signature. Let's try resolving it into 8 to see if it could feel even better, and it just didn't work at all. So 7 it is.
Yeah, what a banger. Love that one.
Yeah. I mean, Look at Me Now is kind of maybe kind of symbolic of the palette decisions that we made on this record, right? Because it's acoustic guitar, which first of all has never really been part of my work. Even with Chairlift, there's some electric guitar, but we're never really a guitar band. But it's combining that kind of folky, bright steel string with a more kind of electronic palette, which you managed to sneak in there, didn't you, Dan?
Yeah, so it sort of expands out into more of a kind of synthesized world. Like it becomes more gradually uncanny as it goes on. So it's sort of the synths creep in really in this one, and that's quite useful because the next track is Insomnia, which is quite an extremely synthesized track in terms of the sort of instrumental nature of it.
There's a lyric in Look at Me Now in the bridge. It says, I can't run anymore, gotta stay right here and face the storm. And Insomnia, track 7, is that storm.
Yeah, no, it's a very intense song because, like, yeah, me and Caroline first started working together when I came to work with her in New York, just sort of on a whim because I liked her music, and then we made a song that we really liked. The things that have happened between then and now are quite extraordinary. The structural shifts in her life have been sort of titanic and incredible, but and we've got to this place which is just like a body of work which just represents such an incredible life journey that Caroline's had. Insomnia is like relating to one of these shifts, and I think really carries the intensity of the event.
Well, the album kind of takes this swooping shape, right? We start high, we go low, and then it ends in a form of high with Parachute. But Insomnia represents the lowest low emotionally, personally, and in some ways musically. It's like it kind of goes harder and deeper in a way than any of the other songs.
Yeah, and it's the sort of middle punctuative track of the album. It starts with The Gate. The middle track is on Insomnia and ends with Parachute, and they're all kind of sisters to each other in a strange way.
Yeah, I call them the ambient suite, these three songs.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah.
Let's have a listen. This is Insomnia. Track 7, Insomnia. The darkest dark on the album.
Yeah, the sister to Parachute and The Gate. And yeah, the chords in that, people find them quite unusual. They're the result of a lot of experimentation using Baroque and Renaissance modulation and suspended chords, and kind of these patterns I was making where I was just modulating in different directions, sort of sometimes unexpected, sometimes expected, and playing with expectation. And then me and Caroline we just tried writing a sort of coherent melody over the top of it, and then out came this kind of like incredible flowing melody that was full of runs, these sort of bizarre twists and turns that it took. And
we wrote the melody in a kind of unusual way for this one as well, because we would just select maybe 4 chords at a time, and I would just improvise on a loop over them, and then we'd go back and listen to what we got and pick the best bit, just it kind of in a vacuum, like without context. Yeah,
but which is especially strange because then with the words it sounds quite like conversational and improvised almost, and yet it's so the opposite of that in terms of the way it was constructed.
I'll be honest, it took me a while to get the words feeling that way. I wanted them to feel kind of delirious and kind of like spoken.
Yeah, this is actually one of the only ones where I helped out with. I helped you out with one word.
You contributed a lyric. Yeah. It changed the whole meaning of the chorus.
Yeah. But yes, no. This is a similar process to Parachute, except Parachute was quite an extraordinary thing in itself.
The lyric that Dan contributed was in the chorus. It was, I think it was previously no reply, no release, and you were like, how about no relief? And it's much better.
Thank you very much. I consider myself a master lyricist of that one word.
Next up, we have Ocean of Tears. Some of you guys might have seen the music video for this one. This is the beginning of... Oh no, this is the end of side A of the album. Show me the future. Yeah, I'm all eyes. Ocean of Tears takes us right into Hey Big Eyes.
Can I just quickly shout out Nate Campany and Kyle Shearer, 2 top lads. Ocean of Tears, what a banger.
And A.G. Cook.
Oh yeah, A.G. Cook.
Yes, a lot of top people on that track. This is Hey Big Eyes, which also has some A.G. Cook production. Hey Big Eyes. Oh wow, my phone is going off. That song is called Hey Big Eyes. And that riff that became the guitar riff came to me as I was in the shower while listening to Surf's Up by the Beach Boys. Shout out Matt Copson for sending me that song right before getting in the shower. And
shout out Brian Wilson, shout out Sega Bodega who's listening at home.
Yeah, and that guitar, that very fake guitar, intentionally fake sounding guitar, just provided the basis for that whole song. Which was one of my personal favorites on the album, and probably one of the most complicated productions for me personally. That track kind of spiraled out of control, but landed on its feet. This is a song called Go As a Dream. Dan, we worked on Go As a Dream together.
Oh yeah, a lot of bassmanship on there, a lot of fretless bass on there, and then some quite complex harmonics because I had to constantly retune my strings.
And this is something that very few people know about Daniel Harle. He's actually a bass master.
Yeah.
Like an acoustic bass master. And
not my words, but if you insist, yes, I am a bass master.
So this song is a bit of a flex, but for bass performance. But This song was very special to me. It was written fairly early along in the process, and it was just a piano song at first. But I was obsessed with this band called Dip in the Pool, and they have a song called Rabo del Sol that has these really crystalline percussion elements, and I wanted to do something that felt that kind of sparse and spare and delicate. And so here's Hey Big Eyes. I'm sorry, here's Go As a Dream. Go As a Dream. This next song is called Carolyn Shut Up. So there's a special riff tucked into that song, which is called Carolyn Shut Up, track 11 off Pang. That's a callback to a song called Parachute that ends the album with. It's this vocal riff that goes, ah, which you'll hear again in a couple songs, and also in a song called Door. And moving right on from track 12, this is a song called So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings. Shout out Dan Nigro, shout out Bananas, also shout out Teddy Geiger. I think she's listening from Berlin, but three of us wrote this one together and we're laughing the entire time. So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings, track 12 off Pang. We've got to blaze into the next one. This is Door, which a lot of you guys listening probably already know.
Back in the city, I'm just another girl in a sweater.
Shout out Timothy Luke. We know you're listening. For all you guys, Timothy Luke made all the beautiful designs that you'll see all over this album and the whole world associated with it. Some more Jimmy Stacks, broken drums, entering the mix. Shout out Polachek News. Shout out Polachek Updates. I know you guys are listening. Love you. This is the most complicated production on the record. It took about a year and a half start to finish, and I had like a nervous breakdown about 3/4 of the way through because I didn't know if this sound and feeling in my head could actually be made real, but layers and layers and layers of collaging, we got there. So in a second, you guys are about to get this vocal solo that combines lines from songs that are on the album and even one song that did not make the album, but which you might hear one day. But this is just a basket of Easter eggs. Here we go. Door in its full glory. Thanks so much to everyone who's tuned in. We've got one last song to play for you, which is last but absolutely not least. This is the first song that Danielle, Harle, and I wrote for this album, and which actually changed the course of the rest of the album because we were both so taken aback by how kind of singular it was. This song is called Parachute. Dan, is there anything else you want to add? Our last song, our last moment.
The weird thing about this one was that we wrote the tune in a similar way to the way we wrote Insomnia, but then you actually had all the lyrics. The lyrics sort of bizarrely were a previous poem that you'd written, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had a dream about a week prior to the session, and it was a dream about falling out of a plane, certain I was going to die, and midway through flying or falling towards the ocean, realizing that I was tethered to a parachute and might survive, and suddenly feeling the parachute getting drawn out over the ocean so far away from land that there'd be no way I could swim back. So essentially accepting my own death in these two waves, and then at the moment where I realize I'm going to be drowned by this parachute falling on top of me, I get swept back up over the suburbs of Los Angeles and dropped between a parking lot and a soccer field, and I wanted to write a song about it, and we did, Dan.
This is Parachute. This is the final track on the album. This is Danielle, Harle,
Carolyn Polachek. Thanks for tuning in. This is Pang.